Jambo, everybody. Jambo. Welcome to Jambo Dr. Akumbu podcast, bringing you cultural relevant, multifaceted conversations and reflections intersecting education, entertainment, and business with a commitment to DEIB and cultural capacity building. Jambo, Dr. Carson.
Jambo, Dr. Ruth. How are you today?
I'm doing really great. Welcome to the show. I hear you have great things about your trip to Africa. Can you
Yes.
just introduce yourself for our audience? Tell us who you are. There's a little thing I do where I ask you for any special meanings to your name. Why do your parents name you who they named you? Like, why were you named Carol? Or why do you have
Yes.
to name Dr. Carson? And then from there, you could just give us a little bit of an intro of who you are.
Okay. Well, my name again is Dr. Carol Carson. I don't think that there was anything special other than my mother just liked the name Carol. And that was it. Again, nothing special. I'm the second oldest in a family of five. There were only two girls and three boys, and my parents are from the South. But I was born and raised in Los Angeles, California. So
nice, very
yes.
nice. Born and raised in California. It's just like us being from California, we know that a lot of us in California are people that immigrated into California,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
From other states and things like that. So it's always very nice to hear a native
Yes.
Californian. Yeah. Hey, so Africa, you went to Africa this year. Tell me all
Yes.
about it.
My wonderful nephew he was in charge of like a revival in Africa. And so he invited me, and of course that's where we went. And that was my first visit to Africa. And I was pleasantly surprised. It was a lot different than I anticipated. But the people, the food, the schools, the children, they were just phenomenal. They were really phenomenal. I teach school in the urban communities of South Los Angeles. I basically went to Catholic school all my life, from the first through the 12th, and then I went to Loyola. And I understand that you went to Loyola as well.
I did. You're a lion.
Yes,
Yay.
yes. So let's see. I went to Loyola for my undergrad and for my master's, and then I went to Pepperdine, of course, for both my first and my second doctorate. So I'm excited about that. Let's see. So I have a different set of knowledge or experience because I went to parochial school and then I taught at public schools. And so that was very different. And I think that because of the discipline and maybe even the religious background, that may have something to do with the ability to move forward at a particular pace. When I went to Africa, one of the first things that I noticed, I was at an assembly, and this assembly was outside. They had 3 different high schools represented. The speaker did not have a microphone, and yet you could hear every word that he said. You didn't hear a teacher or an adult saying anything like, shh, shh, be quiet, someone is speaking. The children were focused, they were disciplined, they were, again, amazing. I was just amazed. And so I said immediately, I want to know how this happened. How are these children so disciplined? How are they so into knowledge? And so I met with parents, I met with teachers, and I met with students. And the one thing that came out was the children have a really great foundation. And many times their foundation is with a spiritual aspect. And they are taught to respect education, to respect their teachers. And it's a huge difference, especially right now, what's going on in the States with our schools and with our students. And I know that you've heard some of the stuff that's going on. For instance, we had a young man not too long ago. I think he was 6'6". He weighed about 240 pounds, and he beat up a teacher because she took one of his I don't know if it wasn't his cell phone, but he knocked her unconscious. And I mean, they took him to court. Of course, he was removed from the school, but he is now facing 30 years in prison. Now, I don't know if that is going to actually come forth, if they're going to reduce that sentence, or they're trying to set a standard, or they're trying to frighten him or frighten people that might want to do something like that. But I just don't, there's such a vast difference. When I spoke to the teachers, one of the things that came out was there was no school police. And I was basically in Johannesburg, Zambia, Lusaka. There's no school police. And the children have such an attitude, a reverence almost for their teachers and for education.
Right.
When our group went to Africa, one of the ladies had a huge duffel bag filled with toys and games, but they were not that interested in that. They wanted books. And so my sister and I committed to filling their library with books, not building the building, but putting the books into the library. And so we're working on that even now. I was told that there was a little boy, he was about 6 years old, and he walked. This school was at, this particular school that I'm speaking of was at an orphanage called Just Because, and it was located in Lusaka. And he walked to school 6 miles every day, and he was never, ever late.
Mm-hmm.
There's no tardy slips. There's no suspension, because they feel if a student is there to be taught, they want to learn, they understand where they are, why they are there, and where they are going. So their whole attitude, their focus is so different from our children. And it's just, again, I can't say enough how amazing they were, how refreshing it was, and how you just wanted to do any and everything for these kids.
Right. Do you think, do you feel like that was something that was all throughout your trip? Because you went to multiple countries, didn't you?
Yes, 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 I did.
Did you visit different classrooms in different countries as you went, or you just went and had experience with that one classroom?
No, I felt that it was in all of the ones in the different cities that I went to. And again, I met with different parents at different points, and the students themselves. Sometimes I would be out just in the area, and I guess they could tell we were visiting, but just the way they interacted with us, they would say, auntie, like I went to a revival one night and I was going the wrong way. And they said, auntie, come with me. You're going the wrong way. They were so concerned. They were so, again, respectful. And I think that we really need that here.
Right.
But they were kind. They were concerned. On our way back from the revival, we walked to our hotel, and they took out their cell phones and put up the light to direct us to make sure we didn't hit in any puddles. They were so concerned about our welfare, and they wanted us to be safe. And I didn't feel unsafe any place that I went to in Africa.
That's great. That is so great.
It is.
You keep nailing on this issue of respect, right?
Yes.
You've touched on the theme of respect quite a few times.
Yes.
And, I'm not saying that American children are not respectful per se. I am saying, like, what I'm going to say is emphasizing the fact that across the African communities that I know, respect is such a key value. So I read an article that said that in the Western countries, what the parent of the child prioritizing is teaching their child to be independent. But when you go to African communities, what those parents prioritize is teaching their children respect.
Yes.
Before independence. So you have respect. And even when I was doing research in Kenya, one of the biggest themes that came out of the research was respect. How the parents talked so much about respect and a lot of respect based on the fact that children are starting to copy the behavior of children in like in America, in France, in Britain. So
Yes.
because of social media, because of television and movies, and just the interconnectedness of our societies today, children are starting in Africa starting to copy behaviors that are not common to that society. So it's refreshing to hear that your experience kind of like still touched on the old values, the values that are really core to the African
Mhm.
communities, and how these communities continue to maintain it. And
Mhm.
you being from Los Angeles, having one of the busiest, biggest cities in the world, and having
Yes.
and teaching in this environment, I
Mhm.
call it a whole different jungle, right? Like people say that
Yes.
Africa is a jungle, but
Mhm.
being in Los Angeles is a completely different jungle. And the
Yes.
experience of being beat up in a
Mhm.
classroom by a
Mhm.
student
Yes.
is very foreign to an African mind.
Right. Uh-huh. Yes. I agree with you wholeheartedly. And I do think that social media has a lot to do with it. In my research, I look not just at the Black students, but the Hispanic students.
Mhm.
Even if they can't speak English, they act the same way. So that's really strange.
Mhm.
They're all, the biggest thing with them is the disrespect.
Mhm.
Uh, they
Social
feel
learning
nothing.
theory, right? Like that
Yeah,
social learning, they're just learning.
yeah,
You don't
uh-huh,
necessarily need to be able to speak, but you can watch somebody and copy and mimic
right.
what they're doing.
Yeah. So when I'm thinking about what you're saying as well. Uh, I'm wondering. There's so many reasons. It's not just one reason, but it does have a lot to do with their foundation
Mhm.
and what they're taught in the homes.
Mhm.
And of course, a lot of times people parent the way that they were parented, but society is so different now. It's not reaching or doing the things that it used to do. It's not accomplishing what it should. And so there's so many things that we need to look at, because my concern is this: the students that we have today are basically, they are going to be our future tomorrow. And if they are not prepared, and if this is our educational system on a particular level is constantly disintegrating, what will happen in the future years if we don't do something to stop this or to thwart it? We've got to come up with something, but there's no one problem. There's so many. Uh,
Right.
but when I look at it now, also, I'm thinking on the foundation, a lot of, I can't speak to the foundation of Hispanic children because I don't know enough about that. But for the foundation for Black children, many times they're not taught about their African heritage, our
Mhm.
traditions, our values, our languages. We don't just have one language, we have many languages. And so we're talking about now being culturally relevant, and that's a
Mhm.
good thing. But I think our children need to know more about their history, their
Mhm.
background,
Mhm.
about the African culture.
Mhm.
Um, I have had so many times now that I've taught, once coming back from Africa, I've shared with the students how the students there treated me, how different they were. And
Mhm.
they have such a different view of what Africa is like. So I'm saying that's not Africa at all. So, and we try to get in, encourage them to find out more, but we can't do it on our own. I think that we need to, at some point, like re-educate our parents or bring more knowledge into that foundation. um, so we've got to look at what works in Africa and try to model that here in America, and hopefully that will help bring about some change. But if we don't, if a kid is at this age, at 6'6", and he's going to beat up a teacher for taking the cell phone,
Mhm.
what else will they do? So it's hard. I noticed that in many of our schools, we have what's called professional development, so that we go through a lot as teachers to bring about a better way to educate our students, more knowledge. Make sure that we've got their history. We're considering all those things, but if when you get in front of students, you're in front of the classroom and you're trying to teach. If you first have to go through and parent, that's hard,
That is
because
very
then by the time, stop this, don't do this, everybody, or you get a little note from a student saying, Dr. Carson, can you move me because these kids make so much noise and I want to concentrate and I can't. And then when you have to be careful, you can't say it while the student is in the class. You don't know what they might do to that student afterwards. So you're in a lot of roles, but you're saying, many times our students do not come to school prepared. Those are little things. You're going to school, come prepared. If you don't have it for whatever reason, go to the administration office the moment you get in, ask for paper, pencil. They're disorganized, they're irresponsible. And those are things that you need along with
right.
textbook knowledge. You
Right.
cannot survive. You can't have a job and decide you're going to come when you want to come because you're tired, or you stayed up late last night and watched television. That's not going to work. So this thing called education isn't just the textbook. It's about life, building relationships. And in order for us to do that, we need that buy-in from the parent.
Mhm.
That parent has to be willing to help set the pace, help the student to understand.
Mhm.
It's a lot. It's a huge battle that we're fighting.
Right.
But unless we take some steps, and again, it's not any one thing, it's
Right.
many.
Right. And but you make a really good point though, that the root is the parent. And
Yes.
then as you think about the root being the parent, just as you mentioned that these are the leaders of tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
now think these are the parents of tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay.
That is a
That's not
really a
bad.
nice myth of a
Mm-hmm.
thought, to think that
Right. Mm-hmm.
kid that just beat up a teacher over a cell phone is going to
Yes.
raising a kid.
Yes. Can you imagine that kid in an office, or anybody who would want to have a business relationship with somebody that wants to beat you up when things don't
Yeah.
go his or her way?
Yes.
Who wants to do that? So,
So
all
that's not
right.
like I can really appreciate how you felt
Mm-hmm.
in the watching the African kids in the class.
Yes.
I can
Mm-hmm.
truly appreciate that, because when somebody says to me, "Go, can you teach high school?" I like, basically high school and undergraduate scares me in America.
Yes.
Those that
Yes.
scare me, because I was raised in that environment that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I was raised in a village, and
Mm-hmm.
I went to school and I sat there and I sat quiet. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to speak. I left up my hand. The teacher gave me permission
Yes.
to speak. I
Mm-hmm.
spoke and I sat down, and another person is speaking. I listen, and
Yes.
the teacher is speaking. You listen,
Mm-hmm.
and if you want to interrupt the teacher, you would put up your hand, right?
Yes. Yes.
That is how I was raised, and that
Right.
is like,
Mm-hmm.
you don't talk back to the teacher. You talk back to the teacher. You got. I know people were like, "Oh, you got whipped." Yes,
Yeah.
you got whipped,
Mm-hmm.
because it's you weren't getting. It wasn't like they were just beating you like, ah. No, it was like,
No.
you're gonna get 1, 2, 3. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You knew the reason why you were getting that discipline.
Mm-hmm.
They explained to you, these are the rules. If you break the rules, this is the punishment for breaking the rules.
Right.
It
Mm-hmm.
meant you're gonna go kneel down in the corner, then
Mm-hmm.
that was the punishment for breaking the rules.
Right.
But it was very rare that
Mm-hmm.
students would want to break the rules. It was, the mindset to me, where children have so much freedom to be
Yes.
respectful to their
Mm-hmm.
teachers, it basically says to me that at home they are very disrespectful to their parents.
Yes. Yes. And if you listen to their language, they use very vulgar language. And I remember asking another teacher, I said, "Do you think that they talk like that at home?" And she said, "Yes, because
Yes.
it's too fluid." She said,
Mhm.
"They can't just stop it and start it. That's just the way that they talk." And
Mhm.
so I have asked a student, I said, "Does your mother know that you talk like that? Or do you think she would appreciate that?" And she said, "Oh, my mother knows. My mother knows." And so so again, you have to constantly, or I have students that will come up to the desk and just open my drawer while I'm sitting there and take what they want. And I said, "No, when you want something, if the door is closed, you knock before you open it. If
Mhm.
you want something, you ask before you take it. You don't just open that. But that mentality puts them in different mindsets,
Yeah,
different types of relationships that gets them into all kinds of trouble.
trouble.
Yes. And
Talking about knocking, knocking is such an important cultural element of
yes. Uh-huh.
you go somewhere, even when I go to a compound, which
Hmm.
is like I'm not even at when I'm entering the compound, I actually say kwa kwa because it's like I'm announcing that I'm coming
Yes.
and I'm
Right.
entering.
Uh-huh.
If I get to the door and it's a place where I'm going to somebody's particular door and
Hmm.
it's closed, that kwa kwa is that knock,
Yes.
and they
Hmm.
will give you permission to enter. If they don't answer, you knock a couple of times, they don't answer, you might be able, if it's somebody you might be able to pip in. Like maybe
Yeah.
they're not home, are they home and they can hear you, you can pip in and call in and
Hmm.
things like that. That whole
Right.
attitude of knocking, even in my own house today,
Hmm.
I live with my nephew. So I still knock. I don't enter the house without knocking. I knock
Yes.
because you build
Uh-huh.
that culture from a child,
Right.
from your childhood. So if
Hmm.
a child feels like they can just walk into a room and just
Uh-huh.
walk into your property and just open it and start taking
Hmm.
things, it's you gotta train them from when they're younger.
Yes, you
You
do.
gotta start when they're
Yes.
young.
And people notice that. People are, I think they're drawn to people that show respect. It
Mhm.
gives them different opportunities. And so I try to explain those things to my students. Then I say, the way that you treat somebody, you never know who's watching you.
Mhm.
You never know. And they're observing how you interact with other people. Do they want that element in their business? Do they want that element in their lives? And so you need to stop and think before you say something, stop and think before you do things. But again, I do think it has to do with the parent. But then when you look at parents, again, you have to go back and you say, well, what was their education like?
That's right.
Yes, what was their education like? And so what are they teaching? And then that's where I love the African, the the whole tradition or the heritage of they seem to help one another.
Mhm.
Because people struggle with different things, and that sometimes shapes and influences how they parent.
Mhm.
So if you see a person struggling in their parenting, you don't have to beat them down. You don't have to talk about them. You can, my mother used to say, if you don't have something good to say about somebody, don't say anything at all. But a lot of people will beat you down, they'll talk about you, but share, help the person. Sometimes people are going through and don't even realize they're going through. Sometimes people are going through and don't realize they need help. But sometimes our experiences will encourage us to do the right thing or influence us to see what's actually going on. And it doesn't take a lot to be kind. It
It
doesn't.
really doesn't.
It doesn't. And so if we could just get back to some of our African heritage and traditions, I would love that. I would like to sponsor something like that here in America. And I don't think I could really approach or maybe add so much to every single problem, but I do feel that I can help when it comes to parenting.
Right.
So that's where I think I'm going to take my research from this point on. But
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah,
but
we should probably collaborate now that you're talking
okay,
about the culture part. We should collaborate and
okay,
see how since my research is African cultural based. So it would be nice to see how I could use elements from my research that are very, very grounded in the African culture and Pan-Africanistic,
yes, uh-huh.
to say the least, and actually help
Mhm.
with whatever you want to do moving forward.
Okay. Now let me ask you a question because you've been in America for a while and
Mhm.
studied and did some research. Do you think that people realize the magnitude of the greatness of the African?
No, No, the moment you said that, oh, I want some of the things I saw in Africa to come here. I
Hmm.
was just like, I've always heard people, I want the gold of Africa. Like you see what's happening in Congo today. I
Hmm.
want the cotton of Africa, but they are primitive and poor, and everything else is bad. And
Hmm.
no, so you're one of the first people that have said, I saw something else. I saw
Yes.
something else that
Hmm.
I think that we should adopt. And
Yes.
that's what, like, some people might think that some of us African that are very aware, even though we're Americans now, we're very culturally aware,
Uh-huh.
and we're very proud of our culture. So if
Yes.
somebody says to me, oh, you come from a village or primitive, that the look I'm gonna give them is just this look of, oh, I feel so bad at your ignorance, right? Like,
Yes.
I
Uh-huh.
am so distraught by your ignorance,
Uh-huh.
because if
Yes.
you understood the riches that I have because of my culture, because of
Hmm.
my life as a child that was born and raised in Africa, you
Hmm.
would you cannot even comprehend the half of it, right?
No.
Just
Hmm.
coming from language.
Hmm.
These children, by the time they even get to a classroom, they can fluently speak their tribal languages.
Yes.
Fluently.
Yes.
Fluently. You
Hmm.
cannot compete with a child like that. The thing, they might not know as much as you might know in the
Hmm.
English language or in the other things. But
Hmm.
it doesn't mean that they are dumb. It doesn't mean that they don't know.
No.
It doesn't mean their culture is not rich. It simply means that they started behind. They
Okay.
basically started behind.
Hmm.
So until Africa, like, until the world can understand the
Hmm.
potential and
Hmm.
the value of the African culture, and not to take it and try to make it their own,
Hmm.
or take it and try to change it, but
Uh-huh.
to learn from it, like you're saying, what can
Hmm.
we learn from this?
Yes.
How can we see what they're doing and adopt it, right?
Yes. Right.
Because if you keep looking at it as primitive, you keep looking at it as, oh, these people are backwards, you're missing out. Like, you are
Yes.
really, 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 really missing out. Like,
Okay.
the African culture is rich. It's
Yes. It is
so
rich.
rich. And
Hmm.
I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you for going there with an open mind.
Yes, I love it. I'm ready to go back, and my nephew loves it too. They are trying to, I think, establish what they call dual citizenship. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
ready to go. I'm ready to go back. I loved it. I love the children. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
they were, and and this is, if I could just get this across to our students, we're not, even in Los Angeles, we're not as teachers, we are not against you in any way, but I have students maybe that I've seen once or twice, and they come into the relationship with real hatred towards me, and I'm saying, I've only seen you twice. What is this
Mm-hmm.
coming from? Where did you pick this up? So,
Mm-hmm.
so when you have to fight those barriers to teach someone, you have to go through hoops and everything. When by the time you get to the point where you really want to teach, the bell rings and the class is over. And
Oh,
they've missed out on so much, and they've disrupted the class for students that are really trying to learn. It's so hard. And they are the ones that are losing out.
they are the ones that are losing out,
They are the
AV.
ones that are losing out. And then, so you even sometimes I try to talk to them about, sometimes Black people are victims of what they call racial stereotyping. And so I
Mm-hmm.
said, when they talk about us like this and they're saying that we're this way and we're not, we become upset. And I said, but you haven't taken the time to
Mm-hmm.
find out about the African people. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
they might make a statement. I said, that's not true. Where did you get that information from? Yeah, so you got to be fair. And sometimes I also express to them that many times you are your own worst enemy,
Yeah.
because you don't take the time to find out what's really going on, nor
Mm-hmm.
do you take the time to practice maybe one or two of
Mm-hmm.
the advice that somebody has shared with you, to see
Mm-hmm.
if it works or if it doesn't, or if it leads to something that would work for you.
Right. Right.
But so I don't know, but I'm just in love with Africa and the African people.
I love
I'm
it.
so proud of them and their values that we have, the
Mhm.
traditions. And so I don't separate myself from Africa. I'm part of Africa.
I am so proud of
Yes,
that. But
I
the
just love
moment
it.
The
do.
moment you accept your African identity,
Yes.
you've started the process of your actual true liberation. Even
Yes.
me as an African,
Mm-hmm.
I have to tell you that because I was fortunate to have parents that had gone to school before I did.
Okay.
So I had a little bit of a different life compared to a child whose parent had never gone to school.
Okay.
So I would speak English at home with my dad, even though I would still speak the tribal language. I would still speak pidgin, and
Mm-hmm.
I would still speak that. So
Yes.
I had a little bit. I was able to read more. My dad will
Okay.
read a newspaper. He will pass it over to me, and I will read a newspaper with him.
Okay.
So I
Uh-huh.
had some of those. So even though I was grounded in the culture, I still had a little bit of a distance between the child that didn't have some of the learned privileges like
Right.
I
Uh-huh.
did.
Mm-hmm.
So I moved at 13 to the cities, and that
Mm-hmm.
kind of distanced me even more from my tribe, right? And my values. Even though you have these tribes meetings and things like that, but it starts to remove you. Then I come to
Yes.
the United States and you're learning, and then now you're starting to almost emulate the Western ways
Right.
of doing
Uh-huh.
it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you
Right.
start to emulate, and then being a Christian and following the
Yes.
Christian religion,
Yes.
you start to think and emulate and behave and
Mm-hmm.
copy and mimic any of those words that we can throw in
Yes.
there at the ways of the West or the ways of the people that colonized your country and the ways of what you were reading in the textbooks, because the textbooks were always grounded in something that had to do with not to do with anything in our community. They were not usually cultural relevant, right?
Right. Right.
So I come to the US and that whole process continue, right? You continue to
Mm-hmm.
evolve away from the
Yes.
culture
Mm-hmm.
and the upbringing that you get. I still have some of those key values, like the
Yes.
respect and the other things,
Mm-hmm.
but you're evolving away
Uh-huh.
towards somebody else's culture.
Yes.
I had to revisit my identity after Joyce Floyd died.
Yes. Yes.
That moment was a catalyst for
Mm-hmm.
me as
Yes.
an African person to
Right. Uh-huh.
say, I sat back and I said, the only reason you're going to treat somebody like that is because your perspective of who that person is completely screwed.
Yes.
Not
Yes.
your perspective is just
Mm-hmm.
not right. At that moment, I said, the perspective that the world has of Africa
Uh-huh.
is completely wrong. They don't
Yes.
understand the black person.
No.
Whether the black person is in the Caribbean, the black person is in the Jamaica, or the Brazil, China,
Yes.
India,
Yes.
America, France, Britain. It doesn't
Yes.
matter where in the world the black person is. There is a perception about that
Yes.
black person that is not correct. And
Mm-hmm.
I am privileged that I grew up in a village. I am privileged that I grew up with all black people in leadership, with
Yes.
parents,
Mm-hmm.
teachers.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was my color, right?
Yes. Right.
So I had to revisit that and said,
Mm-hmm.
how is that my strength? How can I use what I grew up with to start to change perspectives about who people are? Because somebody have said, many Pan-Africanists or
Mm-hmm.
black activists have said, you are not going to be free until on the African continent feels like they are free. You are not going to find value in yourself until the African on the continent thinks that they are valuable. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, if I, as an African, I don't value myself, my culture, my ways of being, my ways of doing things, I'm still going to be a Christian. Like, it's a
Yes.
choice I
Yes.
made to
Uh-huh.
be a Christian, but I did not
Mm-hmm.
make that choice in exchange for every single value that I have as an African. So
Right.
I started taking pride in my culture. I
Yes.
started purposefully going back to my roots because I looked at Joyce Floyd and I said, you treated him like an animal. And you
Yes.
constantly say Africans are animals.
Mm-hmm.
I need to not keep following your everything you say.
Uh-huh.
That removes me from that, even though, because maybe I'm worried that you might think that I am primitive, I am this, I am that. Fine.
Mm-hmm.
I know I am not primitive, because
Right.
I'm primitive based on whose standards. Your standard, you're civilized, but you just killed a man on the street. So whose standards are we talking about? So I had to
Yeah.
really ask these difficult questions
Mm-hmm.
and start to really go back. I started listening a lot more again to my African musics. I
Mm-hmm.
started to be like, okay, how do I bring back my African clothing and combine it,
Mm-hmm.
and just be in Africa? I wear African clothing a lot more than I wear Western clothing. So why am I doing it differently here? I start to say, okay, how can I blend things? How can I be proud of who I
Mm-hmm.
am? If
Yes.
I can be proud of who I am and understand that deep riches of the African continent that you
Yes.
saw, then
Uh-huh.
it will make you the African or the black person that is somewhere else to start seeing that I pride myself in my culture. And you might ask, why is she priding herself in her culture? And then you might learn more. I need to be an example to you.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not an example to you, you might never know. I know. So I have a responsibility to carry myself in that riches and have that identity, so
Mm-hmm.
that other people that have never been to the African continent can understand that the Africa they're thinking of is not the Africa that is.
Right. Yes, I agree with you. And I think that what you're saying, can you just imagine if we can get our, when I say our students don't know who they are, our black students don't know who they are. They don't know the richness of their culture. They don't know the richness of the values, the traditions, our languages with an
Mhm,
S. They don't know it again
mhm,
because they don't know who they are.
mhm.
They don't apply themselves in school. They don't recognize what education is. They don't know where they're going.
Right,
They don't know why. So
right,
there goes their future in how they interact and relate to other people.
right.
We all need to be examples. We
Yes.
all need to carry ourselves a certain way and interact with one another. There's so many old time stories, and some people say, oh, that's true. Other people say, no, it's not. But you
Mhm,
see it being carried out in
mhm,
relationships where, those that have against those that don't have, the light against the dark. It's
mhm,
all those things, whether
mhm,
it's true or not, people are acting on those things. And we
mhm,
need to get rid of that. We need to help one another. We
mhm,
all have certain gifts uh, or talents. I
mhm.
know we have gifts with Christ, but we have talents. Some of us can cook. Some of us
Yeah.
can sew. Some of us can do this. And there are all those things. And if one would help the other, it would relieve a lot of the problems that maybe a mom with 5 children is going through. And so many times when someone is parenting that many children, they have to, in essence, rob from Peter to pay Paul. In other
Mhm,
words, one kid is going to be without. That kid is
mhm,
going to suffer and react so horribly in class or
mhm,
so horribly just out in public society.
mhm.
But if we work together, like they say, they build prisons according to the number of children that can't read by grade 3. Well, that should never happen. If
No.
we approach this as these babies are our babies, they should all be able to read. We should
Mhm.
be teaching them so much, but we're at a disadvantage because half of the energy is spent tearing one another down because we
Right.
don't know who we are.
Amen.
We don't know who we are.
We
So
do not.
we got to work that. We have to work those issues and bring a change.
Mhm.
Uh, Again, Africa is amazing. It's
Yeah.
phenomenal, not on every aspect. The beauty just in the animals, the sea. I mean, I could go on for the food, the everything.
Oh, the food.
Yes,
I
the
miss
food.
the
Yes,
food.
so it's just so much, but we can begin to teach one another and change the trajectory of our students, of our
Mhm,
Black kids.
mhm,
it's so much. And again, we have so much beauty. We just,
Yeah.
I tell my students all the time, I wish that all of you could take a trip to Africa.
Amen.
You
You
can,
know, Carol,
yes.
with my nonprofit, if money was not an issue,
Hmm.
my greatest desire would be to take children on between 12 and 21
Uh-huh.
Africa for at least a week or two
Yes, that would be awesome.
every year, especially the black children, by the way,
Yes, yes, uh-huh.
black children.
Right.
Put
Because
them in there, take a tour of the villages, take a
mhm.
tour of the city, have them play with other kids, the,
Yes,
have the experience, maybe the classroom for a week,
yes,
and then bring them back.
ye-
That would be my dream for the
yes.
young African American child. That would be my
Yes,
dream for them. I have
yes.
that dream. I don't have the money, but
Mhm.
God bless me with money. That's something that I am going to do.
Yes, I agree. I think that that would be an amazing thing. I think it would help them
Yeah.
because they have such a different attitude. These stories that they believe, I don't even know where half of them came from. But yeah,
Old
it's
story told by media and
mhm.
things like that, they pick up
Yes.
and they just believe it, but they don't
Mhm.
realize that that's not true.
Now, I also I noticed that you do storytelling. I love that. I always think about the fact that in our Bibles, the parables were the way
Yes,
that Christ, that was the first storytelling and how he, shared with people. And so I try to use stories
right.
in my classroom, hoping that it would help.
Yes,
Um,
yes,
you could. So I'm trying to get them above everything to think.
right,
To think. Don't just accept something that someone told you.
right.
Don't react a certain way. Sometimes if a kid can do something and get away with it, the
Yeah.
other children will do the same. They will mimic that kid's
Yes,
behavior.
yes,
But
social learning.
but there's one thing right now that seems to be going on, and I'm not sure how to approach it. But if a teacher, if a student has done something and the teacher decides to call the parent to say, look, your kid is doing X, Y, and Z, the child becomes almost enraged. But then what they do is they tell lies about that teacher, but then their friends come along and they go along with it. And they're saying, yes, that's exactly what that teacher did. And that teacher, so that's why I think we have not just the way that they treat teachers, but this new thing that's coming up, many teachers are coming out of their profession
Hmm.
because
They
it's
can't handle
just
it.
not,
It's too much. That's not what they
yeah,
signed up for. They sign up to help your child learn. They don't sign
right.
up to raise the child, right? Like,
Exactly.
and
But
give
we,
them all these values that
right,
they should come into the
mhm,
classroom with.
right. But where do they get this example from? To, in other words, like you the teacher are calling the parent, but
Hmm.
then they're the student and they take the teacher to the administration, and then the student, I mean, the teacher loses their job or their credentials over a lie. So how, I don't know what we can do about that as well. I don't know what I'm
That's
hoping.
unfortunate. That's a
Yeah, it
topic
is.
for additional research. That's
Yes.
something that maybe we can
Mhm.
explore moving forward. And
Yes.
if you
And
have
how,
answers to that, come back,
right.
have another
Mhm.
talk, and
Yes.
see if we can explore that even further. Because
Yes.
that doesn't end at the lower level. This vengeful and
Yes.
doing anything they can to
Hmm.
get what they want. They will lie to get what they want. It
Exactly.
doesn't end at that level. It would go.
Yes.
They will grow with that, and they would do that, and they
And
could be on their job sites, and if
right.
they don't like something about you, they would
Mhm.
they'll even tell a lie or twist
Yes.
something that
Yes.
you've done just so that
Mhm.
they can get you fired. So
Yes. Exactly.
it's just you're seeing who they're gonna be when they grow up. It's
Right. And
unfortunate.
they have no idea when they start.
Um,
That's a very, oh, it's a game that nobody should play because they're
yeah,
going to mix with the wrong people
yeah,
and it will be devastating. So, but how do we get people? So that tells you that they're not a, a people or a student population with integrity. They
right,
don't tell the truth.
right.
And once they see that it's working, I know I've
And the
had,
thing is this though, our society have also said that truth is relevant, right?
right.
And
Okay.
it's your truth, it's my truth, and all of
Mhm.
that. Not
Right.
saying there's no value in that,
Right.
basically saying that where do you draw the line?
Yes.
Where does a child learn to draw the line? So
Yes.
to that child, that's their truth.
Uh-huh. I don't know what we are going to do.
We got it just kind of burst on my end. Like
Okay.
I basically said what was the truth and what where do we draw the line? So every thought you have after that, please do share.
Okay. Where do we draw the line? Again, I think it goes back to parenting and the values that we instill in our children, that it's important. And we've got to some way show them that when you don't tell the truth, what the consequences are. And so it's a lot, again, it's a lot of things. I do notice that in some schools, if they will tell you you cannot eat in class, you cannot use your cell phone in class. Well, you in your class, you might say, you guys know the rules, you cannot eat in here, and or you cannot use your cell phone. And they will say, oh, well, Miss So-and-so lets us do it, or Mr. So-and-so. So you teachers gotta be, they've got to be consistent, they've got to
Yeah,
be committed, and they've
yeah,
got to stick together too. Otherwise, it's going to be a huge hassle
yeah.
about what the kids want to do and what they don't want to do. It's and if
You know,
you have
so
there.
saying that is actually like reminds me of a situation that I had to handle even at the doctorate level, right?
Okay.
And they're like, well, this other teacher said we don't have to do it, or my other students said their teacher don't make them do it, and I was like,
Yes.
that's their teacher,
Yes.
that's not me. I'm making
Right.
you do it. You are my student.
Uh-huh.
I'm making you do it. I
Mhm.
was like, it blew my mind because
Mhm.
again, going back to my roots, as you were saying, as an
Mhm.
African born and native, I it was just shocking to me that the student would even say something like that to me. Like, I need to change my rules because that other person put this on their rules.
Yes.
I was
So
like,
that
no, it's not happening.
so then you get that teacher aspect, a perspective in there that's going to deter you from getting across. You've got to work with the parents and you've got to work with the teacher.
Yeah.
And you're not supposed to have a cell phone. Sometimes a kid will say to me, oh, it's my mom calling. She just wants to find out this. Someone said, your mother calls you during class time? That doesn't make any sense. And of
No.
course, you can't say to them, give me your phone. Let me talk to your mom, because then that doesn't work either. But there's a lot that needs to be done. We need to look at a lot. I know in my last dissertation, I used the framework of Bronfenbrenner and
Mhm.
also of Dr. Tyrone Howard. Dr. Howard is over at UCLA. He usually works a lot with male students, Black male students. But he feels that a huge thing is the relationship that we have with our students. And so he's saying, you need to ask the student how they're doing, what's going on in their life, because these kids are going through a lot. And so they need someone to
Mhm.
maybe bounce things off or to just have some sort of conversation with.
Mhm.
And I really agree with a lot. We had huge trainings in our school district regarding this particular subject matter. But now what's coming up is a lot of the things that are in building this student-teacher relationship
Mhm.
falls under the umbrella of sexual grooming. In other words, like if you're asking a kid little things like, oh, how you're asking the kid things that are personal, and you have to be really careful, because I don't know if you've ever noticed any of the things that are coming up now where they're saying this teacher had an improper relationship with a student.
Right.
A lot of those things come out. They a lot of times teachers were having parties for their students where they supplied alcohol and movies, things like that. Well, it can lead to that. You have to be really careful. So I'm not sure what they're going to come up with next.
Mm.
Um, that's sort of interesting to me. And I really, really value Dr. Howard. He is a great individual.
Mhm.
Bronfenbrenner, he's basically saying that every system you have within any community is the same, but the systems in the urban communities are damaged and oppressed. so the kids don't get the same values that
Mm-hmm.
if they would get if they were in a community that was one that was entitled. And
Mm-hmm.
so I understand that as well. We have people talking to us about what our kids eat that makes them more prone to violence. So you see,
Mm-hmm.
there's so many different
Moving
aspects.
parts,
Yeah,
yeah.
so many different. But I do think that the relationship, parent-child relationship is huge
Mm-hmm.
because a parent-child relationship covers what the kid eats,
Mm-hmm.
covers, they would be able to set up boundaries
Mm-hmm.
or talk to their child about
Mm-hmm.
what kind of relationship they would have with the teacher,
Right.
or they would be privy to that kind of knowledge. So that would
Mm-hmm.
help them. So again, I think it's the foundation.
Right, it is.
Yeah, I think it's the foundation. So
And
there's.
now that you mentioned the parent a couple of times,
Mhm,
one thing my participants were teachers, administrators, elders in the
mhm,
community,
mhm,
parents, and
mhm,
then students.
mhm.
And one of the comments, as you're talking, one of the comments I received was the students noting that it is important for the parents to be a part of their education because
Yes.
of basically what you're saying. Like
Mhm.
their feeding, like the parent needs to be responsible for their feeding. The
Yes.
parents need to be responsible for supplying like the things that they need to thrive in school, so
Yes.
they're
Yes.
not worried when they
Mhm,
get to school.
mhm,
And that comment didn't hit me until you just said what you've said, because
mhm.
I took for granted that that's what African parents do because that's
Yeah.
what my parents did. So
Yeah.
it was just that emphasis of the
Yes.
importance of the
Mhm.
parent in the teaching process. So I have a symbiotic a model that actually includes all of that, like the local
Okay.
context and the local culture. You have
Uh-huh.
to put the parent, the teacher, the student in the conversation of teaching, and,
Mhm.
if I haven't touched the teacher and the administrators, everybody needs to be a part of that conversation of teaching.
Yes.
It
Yes.
cannot be something where the parent dumped the child and then
Mhm.
it's your responsibility to raise the child, educate the child,
Mhm.
but the parent tells you the rules of raising that child.
Mhm.
It's too hard for one teacher. One teacher can do all
Yes.
of that.
And you see, each student comes with their own set of
Mhm.
circumstances.
Yeah.
I had one student that for breakfast she would come. She didn't like what they gave them at school, so she would have this brown bag, and in that brown bag for breakfast she would have donuts, chocolate bars, chips,
Mm-mm.
sodas. She had all. So I told her, she was like maybe 13 or 14. I said, you don't want to eat like that. That can lead to diabetes. And I said, you're young, one day you might want to have children. I said, it's sometimes when they put you on insulin, not always, but sometimes it could lead to you with the inability to have children. So
Mhm.
she told everybody that I was fat shaming her. So
Wow.
I
Oh,
had
wow.
to call her parent for something. And so the lady said, oh, so you're the teacher that's been fat shaming my daughter or my granddaughter? And I said, no. I said, I know what I'm talking about when it comes to diabetes. And so I don't want her to be sick. And a lot of times our kids, our people don't have that knowledge. And a lot of things that we eat might be cheap to some, but it turns into sugar or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it does. Like sometimes a kid may go to McDonald's and have a large orange juice and hash browns. Well, that orange juice is filled with sugar. The hash browns are potatoes that turns into sugar. All of those things affect you. Who wants to stick themselves every day? Who wants to have to take insulin? So if you start eating the right way, so I was able to
Do you think?
convince
Yeah, go ahead. You were
I was
able to convince.
I was able to convince her, and she just said, "Well, she will never eat like that again. She won't be bringing those bags."
Oh,
So
thank
that worked.
God. That
Yes.
worked. Thank God. But you see, you were a mature teacher, right? And you
Yes.
were able to handle it the way you handle it. A
Hmm.
younger teacher would just be like, I don't have to deal with this. And then
Yes.
they leave. And
You're
then the
right.
school system doesn't have
Mhm.
enough teachers. It's
No.
not that there's not enough people willing to teach. It's that
Yes.
nobody is willing to deal with what you just explained. I
Yes.
feel like they're walking on eggshells. I feel like the
Yes.
parent is gonna come after them. People don't want that.
I had another student that done some things that were wrong, and so I called her mother to tell her. I mean, we went back and forth, back and forth. The mother even kept the student out of school so that when we talked, the student would be there to maybe say I'm telling the truth or telling a lie. But in the end, the little girl appeared to be sorry. And so she was apologizing to me for what she did. And her mother said, oh, no, 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 you're going to get her. She didn't want her child to. So to me, she was teaching the kid to be stupid.
Yes.
But, she should have wanted her to be humble. If she did something wrong,
Yes.
she should apologize for what she did. But it's a huge thing. But again, it goes back to the parenting. So then you have to look at, how do we educate these parents?
Right.
What do we do? So if you were to have a situation where a parent could actually observe a classroom, if their student was in there, that student is not going to do anything wrong while their parent is observing. So I think it would be good to have cameras, but a lot of teachers say no. They feel like
it's invasive.
Yeah, it's invasive, and that somebody would be critiquing how they teach. But I'd rather for you to critique how I teach, and maybe I correct it, or maybe I can show you where it's the right way, and have parents be able to see what these teachers are up against, trying to teach their children.
Right. Good point. Like online classrooms is a good example, because when you record an online classroom, they can go back and watch it and be like, okay, this is what happened, that what happened. And so you have a point there. We don't know what the fine print will look like and all of that. But if you take it from the context of an online class, then things get recorded and you can go back and observe and say, okay, this is what happened. And you can clear your decision, learn from it, grow from it. Parents can learn from it, grow from it.
Yes.
Visualization is a big part of change, right? Systemic change. Visualization is a big part of it. That said, I wanted to ask you, there is this big thing that is on social media about African versus African Americans. Africans don't like African Americans, and they don't like us. So what was your experience? Like, did you have any of that fear before going to Africa? Like, oh, maybe we're not the same.
I have heard the comments that, the African people don't really accept us or whatever, but when I went there, I didn't feel any of it. And I did not have that in the back of my head or anything. I just went with an open mind and an open heart. And I just observed how they treated me. And they were, like I said, they were kind to me. They showed me they were, they went out of their way to help. They were respectful. They wanted to share their culture with me. They would. So I truly enjoyed it. I loved it. I'm ready to go back. Good. I want to go back to the parts that I didn't go, I didn't get a chance to go to. I'm ready to go back. And I'm trying to, again, help some of the students that are there, sponsor some of the kids. I just need to find a way to make more money or to know how to access grants or something that I can help these kids with. But no, I didn't feel any of that. I didn't feel like they didn't like me.
That is great, because that is what when I started hearing those comments, I was very shocked. I was like, wait, what? Africans? Especially on the continent, we love people. Anybody that is a guest is treated like royalty. What are you talking about?
Exactly, yes. And I met a lady when I went to I think it was last night, and they said she was a princess, and my heart was just overflowing, and I just ran up to her and I hugged her real tight. And I said, oh, a real live princess. I said, you are beautiful. And she was so kind. She gave me, she says, I will be in the States in such and such a time. And I said, please call me. We can do something, But I really felt that a real live princess, African princess. I was I was just overjoyed. I was so excited, and I felt privileged to meet her. And I think that she could feel my being genuine. And she said, she was talking, there was another lady with her. She said, get her information. And so hopefully we will get to see each other. And if I get back to Africa, I'm definitely going to look her up.
Yes,
I know her. Yeah. She was such a beautiful lady, a real live princess. I was so excited. Yes.
I never know when I talk to people. I never know. I always expect two things: after they really didn't like the African continent where they went, or they really, really loved it and want to go back. So
I do.
I am glad you're in that group that really, really
Yes.
enjoyed your stay and want to
Mm.
go back. And
Yes.
as you know, I have a nonprofit that works in Africa and here. So if there's anything we can collaborate on, work on, try to get some of those
Mhm.
things you want to accomplish
Yes.
on the
Okay.
continent, don't
Mhm.
hesitate to let me know. So
I
thank you.
will. I
Yeah,
will. And I'm definitely going to work some more on this parenting thing, and I will
yes,
try to keep you informed as I
yes.
go along, the process. So that's
Sounds
going to be exciting.
wonderful.
Yes. Yes.
Let's be the change we want to see in the world, and
Yes.
let's leverage the knowledge we have and share it.
Mhm. Okay. I think we should do that. Yeah. Let's bring our countries, our people together.
How we have people together. We have a
Yes.
very rich heritage, and
Yes, we
nobody
do.
should ever, ever, ever make us feel like it's
Mhm.
inferior. It's not
Yes.
inferior. It's actually
Mhm.
one of the richest heritage that the world has
Yes.
ever seen, and we need to take pride in that.
Yes, we do. So, and I will try to keep you posted as I go along and as
Sounds
I do things that maybe you can use some of it and
yes.
whatever, but
And
I
feel
will.
free to use any of my work and
Okay.
contact me for help
All
anytime.
right. Okay. Thank you so much for having
Thank
me
you.
on this
Asante,
podcast. Thank
asante.
you.
Yeah.